What's up, everybody? Nick Powell's, publisher of 1851franchise.com, here with another episode of Meet the Zor, where we introduce you to franchise brands across the world. Today, we are talking Vanguard Key Clubs, coming up next. All right, Craig, actually, we're going to start with you. What's your accidental franchise story? How did you accidentally fall into franchising?
Honestly, none of this was ever planned. Back in 1992, I graduated from college with my business degree and wanted to go into the ski industry, and in the Northeast, and it's very part-time. So that wasn't going to make me a living. So I ended up working the front desk at a small gym, like 4,000 square feet, and just slowly kind of learned the business, the ropes from there. General managed another gym for a few years. Ended up buying out that other woman. Ran it, built the gyms over the next 32 years. And the biggest kicker here was that my daughter graduated from business school and she said, "Dad, I want to do what you do." I said, "Why?" She said, "Because you come to our games, you get us on the bus, you go to our banquets, you go to our plays, because you don't have a 9-to-5. Because these facilities being 24-hour key clubs and non-staff, they're like the vending machines of health clubs, right? So, it kind of landed right in her lap where she was like, "I want to do the work." I said, "Well, there isn't enough work for two of us, sweetheart. So, what am I going to do?" And she says, "Well, people have never said this is a bad idea. Why don't you just see if other people want to open them too?" So that's kind of where it evolved. It just, as the years leading up to her graduation, I was like, "Well, I'm not going to retire. So why don't I just show people how they can have a quality of life, an actual work-life balance, and still run, facilities on their own?" So, yeah, that's kind of, that was basically it. It just kind of evolved that way. It was never the intent, but, now we're just kind of hoping that there's a little bit of demand.
Okay, so a lot that I want to unpack there. First, just a clarifying question: how many franchisees do you have now?
0. We just launched this in the spring. Yeah, okay, we spent the last 2 years getting all the work done. We've got 6 of our own corporate locations, and we just launched in like June at the international trade show in New York.
Okay. Lots that I want to unpack from this, but I'm going to start with the end because I think it's so important. Mm-hmm. There's two things that are valuable, hopefully valuable for you. One is, if you think back to the day before you're in franchising and say, explain it, most can't. Most can say McDonald's. You say FDD, item 19, item 5, item 7. It's like, okay, this is a foreign language. And so the first message that the two first things that I see when I land on your website currently, which I would blow up, and this is why. One is, want to own a franchise, but you haven't told me what franchising is. And this is a gap that most franchisors struggle with, because they go straight to the sale, but they forget the fact that the people that are going to buy these things are very confused on what franchising is, which means they land on your website. You spend all this money and energy to get them to your website, and then they leave because they got to go figure out what franchising is. But the second one, and I wrote it down while you're speaking: "Dad, I want to do what you do." And then you said that we want to have the work-life balance. Mm-hmm. That's your why now. And so when I'm thinking about how do you position, like at the end of the day, and we're going to talk about points of differentiation, which I think I've landed on one of them. But at the end of the day, what are you trying to sell? And what you just said right there is such a big nugget. That, "Dad, I want to do what you did because you're at all my games. You walk me to the bus." And so if we're going to sell the dream, you have a widget, which ends up being a gym. But in front of that, you have something that's so powerful, and a message that came from your daughter, and now has encouraged you to go into business for yourself. Then, and I know before we went online, you said, I don't like video. I don't like doing my webinar. I like being asked questions. Well, cool. Take this video, put it right underneath it, because what you're explaining to the buyer is that your North Star is making sure that they have time with their family, and at the same time with 6 clubs that they can build wealth for their family. And those things are so vital, but it's missing right now. And the last thing I'll say, and then I want your comments on this. It drives me bananas. I want to see gyms full, not empty. So I just see a picture of an empty gym. Like, show me your people excited.
And then you got to get permission for every single person or you got to use stock photos. And I'm not going to use stock photos. So we try to like blur people out, or we try, I want to see bodies, not faces. Right. So that's kind of a thing. Otherwise you're getting release forms. And then, it's funny because years ago I did commercials, like TV commercials on cable. And, I had a few testimonials from real members. About a year later, things change. People move. They go to different gyms. They try. Then all of a sudden, you're doing these commercials, and that person isn't even a member anymore. Because that's what the gym industry is. It's a revolving door. They talk in the industry about retention. You sometimes you just can't. And it's kind of a misnomer to me. It always has been. I've always done things a little black sheepish. It's never been the norm. And I focus on the people that want to be there. I don't put a lot of effort and energy into the people that don't want to be there. And that usually does well for us because then we're giving people the attention. We only really need to give them the attention when they need it. If it's important to them, it's important to us, right? When you're running a facility where you don't have a front desk, the front desk person isn't setting the tone for the facility. Sometimes it's clickiness. You get that 18-year-old kid in the afternoon. He's always talking to his lifting bros and stuff like that. And that woman who comes in his 60s, she doesn't even want to go to the front desk and ask for something because he's like hanging with his crew. That isn't this way. All they have to do is email us, pick up the phone, the courtesy phone that's right there, text us, whatever. If they need something, we'll address it. But it's really one of those things that, I think franchisees and members don't want to see a crowded facility when they're looking at it. They want to see the equipment. They want to see if it's clean. They want to see if it's bright. So the website is the brochure, right? So, that being said, we have obviously plenty of people. They'll come in, they do a remote tour, they pick up the phone, they call us, we remotely let them in through a cell phone. They go in, they wander around, they get the actual feel for it. We encourage folks to do that. What you're talking about as far as the work-life balance, that's the message we're really starting to evolve with. And from kind of a quote from the CEO at Crunch, who said there's no such thing as a work-life balance. He works weekends and nights and he's always go, go, go. And I'm thinking, well, dude, I think you just got the wrong model. When we went to the trade show, I deliberately brought my daughter down, who's our operations manager. We set up a podium and she brought her portable printer. She brought her laptop and she was actually doing the job. The podium actually said, come see what the day-to-day looks like. And that's exactly, she was working from there. It wasn't some schmoozy sales guy or whatever saying, hey, this is what you get. This is the job. This is what it looks like. And it looks like you could be on an airplane at 30,000 feet as long as you have internet, doing enrollments or answering emails. It looks like being on vacation, hanging out by a dock by a boat. It was me answering the phone and letting somebody in the door remotely because they forgot their key tag or they couldn't get in while I'm coaching third base for my son's baseball team. It really has just evolved that way over the 3 decades. And I think if people come to us and say, hey, we want to have that extra income, and it could be an extra income. You can keep your day job, right? It could be the administrative work for a spouse while somebody else carries the full-time job. So he or she can be home with the family and the kids, because all you need to do is the emails will come in, the enrollments will come in automatically, the cancellation requests, hey, you got a piece of equipment that's broken, so we can get our tech involved. And you can handle that all at once, or you can just handle it throughout the day, which most people would do. And that's why we're kind of doing what we're doing, because it's not really out there. There are 24 hours. There's your snaps and your anytimes. They're smaller. They're personal training studio type things. They have staffed hours. These are 10, 12,000 square foot full-blown facilities. We just don't do things like classes. Yeah. So
that's based on what you're saying. What should the photo be then? So I'm leading the witness.
No, that's a good question. I mean, it depends on what you're referring to, right? If when it first comes up, usually it's the facilities, because the website mainly is for members, right? Because those are your clients.
I'm talking about the franchise.
For franchisees, geez, I don't know. Maybe is it? I don't know I'm not sure how to demonstrate work-life balance. Do I have the person on the phone letting somebody? I mean, they wouldn't know necessarily what they're doing.
It's you coach in third. I mean, that's what it is. Like, again, that's what you're selling. Again, like the widget and what you've engineered. And again, there are plenty of brands in the space. So you got to compete against, not just look at my investment level or look what category I'm in. You got to compete against everybody you're capturing someone who's qualified and ready to buy. Right. And so if you're going to do that, you can put yourself you show them what a day in the life is. And what you did with your daughter at IFE is great, because what you're saying is, come look at me do my job. And so if you play up absentee and say, like, you don't have to be in your facility in this photo, all of a sudden you're speaking a language of scale. Again, like the bookends of what you're selling is family and wealth building with 6 locations. And you've engineered that. So I think again, if I bought your business today, I'm honing in on those messages because I think it could make a huge difference. Out of curiosity, I mean, you've been doing this for a long time. You've had September 11th, you've had 2008, you've had COVID. What have been the most stressful times in your career in this business, and how did you overcome them? And if another one happens today, how is going through those experiences prepared you that you can weather any storm?
Love that question. September 11th obviously didn't do much for us. The 2008, 2009. At the time, I think I only had 3 locations. I also owned our service company. The guy that was doing all of our equipment service, he sold me his company. And so I was just sort of managing that because I had the time. And what I did is I fired the cleaning crew, and he and I went and did the cleaning. And then he would go on and do his other stuff. Because I wasn't sure what was going to happen. Everybody was kind of freaking out. And I was like, well, I can do the work. I have the time, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'll scrub toilets. It's not beneath me. I've been doing it for 30 years. I'm probably a master plunger, right? This is what people do. They eat a lot of protein and they kind of poop sideways. So we're doing the cleaning, and we didn't really lose much business because what I discovered, we're not the the big box, low price point, high volume kind of place. We stand in there $39 a month. We have a lot of equipment options, right? And what I discovered then was that people that are really into fitness, we're not talking about the 80% of the people that aren't into fitness that will pay. Those people will cancel and save their $10 or $15. The people that are really into it, if they're not working, they will give up on they're going to their movies or going out to dinner so they can work out, so they can stay healthy, so they can stay fit. That was basically the same thing with COVID. So we didn't really see a downturn in 08, 09. COVID, of course, freaked everybody out. People are closing, shops left and right, and nobody knows why or how to reopen or whatever the case may be. One of the things that we did, it's the way we communicate with our members, is immediately we put everybody on freeze at $5 a month, which is a standard. Some facilities are $10 a month, but it's just a stipend, $5 a month, hold you in the system so you don't have to re-enroll. People go off to school or vacations, they can do that. So everybody automatically went on freeze. Kids are out of school. I went to them and I said, you know what, would you guys be interested in coming to the facilities, scheduling with members if we allow them to rent the gyms for $20, one person only? So that means if you're a member at the gym and you get this email, it's not intended for regular use, but I'm going to rent you the whole 10,000 square foot facility for $20. And if it's you and somebody in your household, it's $30, right? The kids organized it. They scheduled it. They collected the cash and let people in physically because their key tags aren't working. Everything's shut down. And they will let people come in. And it exploded, and they were just going nuts, scheduling, jumping between all the different locations, collecting the cash themselves. And they kept the cash. I didn't take it. It was for them. I think my son used his to build some supercomputer or something like that. He's going to rule the world. So, and that was probably almost a month. And now they come to reopening, and now everybody's kind of like, what's it going to be? Are people going to be afraid to get back into the gym? They were not afraid to get back into the gym. In June of 2020, when all at the time 5 locations were reopened, we tripled the business that we would normally do. And mind you, I was kind of freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, we're going to get bursting at the seams. It's amazing when you put people together and there's even a threat of, getting sick or the fear or whatever, they stay away from each other if they're concerned about staying away from each other. We didn't have to go through reopening protocols because we didn't have to train staff. We didn't have to put up plexiglass shields. We don't have a front desk. We just turned it back on again when they said it's okay to turn it back on. And because we were so fast, as soon as they said okay, it really just took a swipe of a couple keystrokes to reactivate everybody's membership and they could start going in. This location across town was still going to be a week before they could open because they had to train and prepare and put up plexiglass and all these, safety things. They just said, screw it. I want to work out now. I've been waiting for a month, So that was just a huge surprise. And I think it had a lot to do with our involvement, our communication with members. I was constantly emailing them, giving them status updates from each state, because we're in 3 states, right? Massachusetts, Maine, and New Hampshire, and different states had different timeframes. So I'm constantly, telling them what's going on with that state, when they're proposing to reopen, what our plans are going to be to reopen. When it's ready, we'll let you know. We'll flip it on. If some people were in Massachusetts, it's only across the border, so they would stay on they would reactivate, but they would only be allowed to use maybe the New Hampshire ones because New Hampshire was open first, right? Like it's reciprocal. So I didn't really care where they were going. And honestly, if they didn't care, we did our part. We did the cleaning and the fogging and all these things to make it at least look like it was supposed to be, we're being responsible, but you can't chase this stuff down. I mean, over 4 years, we're still fighting COVID here and there. So, I'm a big take care of yourself. Don't expect others to take care of you. We'll do our part. But if you're comfortable, be responsible, And I guess I learned a lot more about really our members, the type of member that we draw, and what's really important to them. They understood that exercising and fitness was important at staving off illness. You don't take that away from somebody just any more than you take away the doctor or the dentist or whoever the case may be when it comes to things like that, right? I mean, there are sanitation stations. They can wipe things down. They can wear a mask if they want. We don't care, but it really taught me that fitness is really important to a lot of people. It may not be that 80% of the population that doesn't want to, but we really focus on that 20% that do, and we get people from the big boxes all the time because those are great starters for us. People get in there, they start exercising, and they realize they can they got to tap out because they've reached a plateau. They want to go to 60-pound dumbbells or 70-pound dumbbells. They can't do it at some places,
See, that's where now we get to the second message. Again, if I've bought your brand, I'm blowing up your website. The next message is you get to tap into 3 decades in fitness. And what that means is like there is certainly a fear of the unknown. If you're a first-time entrepreneur, you just started your franchise, you're a franchisee or franchisor, and you hit COVID, you're like, oh shit, that is intense.
Yep.
But when you have other things to look back at, I'm like, what did it feel like to be on the edge of feeling like we could lose everything 2008?
Right.
Well, it puts things in perspective. And so now you go to battle and you say, how are we going to battle through that? That's an asset that if I'm a franchise buyer, I'm buying into this. So from expectation standpoint, I mean, you obviously launch in June at the Expo in New York. How have your expectations been set on how franchising would go? And up to this point, how have how have your expectations been met or not?
I try not to have great expectations ever. I always sort of set myself up for disappointment, but it doesn't keep me from working hard towards achieving something, and that's kind of been this entire career. I just wanted one facility back in the day. I was 23 years old and we were struggling. It was a small facility and I ended up having to give up my apartment. And I slept in a futon in my office for 6 months before I went back and slept on a fold out couch at my parents. But when you're 23, 24 years old, you can do that. I don't have a wife and kids and all that. I was just determined. But none of the things that we've done, because I started normal. I started with a front desk. I started with a little childcare room. I started with an aerobics program. I mean, we had staffed hours, 5:30 to 9 o'clock at night. I would get up at 5, clean the toilets, open the doors at 5:30, kick everybody out of my living room at 9 o'clock, roll into the futon, do the same thing 7 days a week for 6 months. And, this didn't evolve through genius. This didn't evolve through some, master plan. This evolved through pivots, just a series of 30 years of pivoting. When you reach an obstacle, a lot of people just try to go head first through it. And I just have to stop. I got to take a breath. I got to pivot. And if I'm bringing anything to a franchisee, and that's my next career. My next career is to work with people that want to run gyms of their own and be able to encourage them, take a pause, take a beat, look at your options. It seems like this is the end of the road. It's not. There have been so many ends of the road. When you're living in your office and you're behind 3 months rent, on your facility, you're thinking it's the end of the road, and you just got to give it a minute. Hey, buddy. So, I guess that's what we're bringing to the table, and you can't buy that, and it's my involvement. It's not, I'm not passing this off to somebody else. I'm the guy that's going to go out. If somebody wants to open one, I'm going to go onto your site. I'm going to walk through with you. I like that part. I like the building of the gym part. We've constructed our own 6 locations. We've moved 2 or 3 of them. So the construction, the fit up, the, just the day-to-day management. And then now having my daughter on board to assist with that, that's even better, right? Because, I asked her at the show, I said, what, how many of these facilities now that you've done this for a little over a year, do you think you could run by yourself? She's like, probably about 12. One person running 12, right? Because she doesn't work a full-time job right now, which is why she wanted my job.
Right.
She's a millennial. She's like, I want the easy job. I want to be on my computer. I'm like, great. I'm going to give you more. So she's also going to be helping me on the franchise side of things, right? She's going to be that voice. So once they're set up, if somebody has hey, Dalen, how do you handle this member who asked this question or has an issue this way? And she can say, this is how I handle it, just as advice. Right? We're not telling people what they have to do. We want to just kind of coach them and work them into the job. Don't make it more than it really has to be, because it really doesn't. It really just runs itself for the most part.
Did you expect, you're in New York, you're having all these people come up to your booth. Did you expect to have franchisee 1 done by now, or?
I know that's probably the hardest. Sorry, dog just has to come in and say hello.
All good.
This is the upside to not working in your traditional.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
You get to hang out with your dog. I didn't know what to. I have been told, and I understand. That first 1 or 2, those are the hardest ones, right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to really jump into the pond unless somebody else kind of tests the waters first. And I can sit there and tell people all day long how the 6 corporate locations are doing, that the margins are 40%, and because you don't have payroll. Payroll is not a thing, right? Your biggest nut is your rent. But when it happens, I think that's when things are going to start to roll. And it's just us learning how to get out. I've never done this before, right? I've never done I can sell gym memberships. I can tell stories. I've never sold franchises before. But when if they come out here and they see the way that we live and how the facilities are operated, they're going to sit there and they're going to seriously think about, wow, this is something I can do. If I can find a location near my hometown or wherever it is I want to be, and I get a reasonable rent, we'll help people talk through lease options, and they can talk with other people about lease options. You'd want that to be a decent, negotiation, right? You don't want to just get yourself screwed. There are people, there's a gym 1 town over. It's between the two towns that we're located in. I can't take it, but it's a franchise, and they took 25,000 square feet at prime rate, right? And they're getting killed. The realtor's already called me saying, hey, do you want to take this over? I'm like, no, it's way too big. And they've got limited equipment, and it's all spread out. It's like 15 feet between pieces of equipment. That just wasn't smart. And why their franchisor didn't advise them differently is beyond me, because I do believe a lot of franchisors, they just want to sign the deal.
That's it.
I don't want to just sign the deal. I'm reading Michael Side's book right now. They're actually MSA, the consultants that helped me get this all the paperwork done. The franchise management for dummies, and it's really written more for the franchisee than it is the franchisor. But I need to understand how somebody coming in might be looking at it, and it's very clear. Don't make those kind of stupid mistakes, and watch out for your franchisors that are just trying to sign the deal. And I'm not. It's not worth it to me. Like this is. Remember, this is second career. I'm doing fine. I'm living. This is about building the brand and helping other people achieve and experience what I've been able to achieve and experience, but without going through the sleeping on the futon part, Well,
I think that's part the backstory ends up being a part of why I would bet on you. And that's where I hit the 30 years of doing this. When I know that what it feels like to have a rainy day, that's an asset for a franchisee to be able to say, why would I do this? Look, in franchising, you could count, you could not count on 100 hands how many home service franchisors have been created. Very little point of differentiation, very little obstacle to get into it. Many broker communities selling it. And so you're competing against all of these businesses out there, but they are selling franchises. Here, you're saying, let's develop franchisees, which I will say, those that pay attention to that mentality of how do we develop franchise owners will make a significant more money off of royalty anyway, because you've brought in people that actually want to be a part of the system. They weren't sold in, and they're not as afraid because you've qualified them and developed them as a candidate. And you have a roadmap. You can show what does it look like to be a multi-unit operator within the system. You can point to your daughter getting involved in the business. And I said at the beginning of this, I think there's another nugget here that you're going to be able to play up. And that's the investment model, because in a very competitive 24/7 fitness marketplace, a lot of the investments are hitting north of $1 million. And that's partly because the brands are trying to keep up with the Joneses. They want to have all the bells and whistles. And you're saying, keep it simple, stupid. Like this is how we do this. And look what happened. So look, I think you have all the right pieces. I think you're right. I think the hardest part is getting that first one across the finish line, but I wouldn't discount the fact that you're a 6-unit operator. And even that's another message that I would really play up at the top, that we know how to operate 5+ units. We are the one that you're following. We are number one. You would be number two. And I think that's a good way to look at it. Craig, in closing, as we finish off here, anything else you want the franchise buyer, if they've watched it up to this point, to think about?
I mean, there's so much to think about, but really I can't push enough. If you want to not have to work real hard and make a decent living, there are ways to do that. Once the facilities are built, it really just becomes, stocking the machine, essentially. And actually one of the other things that MSA had pointed out, they thought from a standpoint of, is anybody out there that's into the multi-unit development, or if they're a developer, they own a property, they have a plaza with an empty space. This is the type of facility that you can plunk into your empty unit, that 10,000 square foot retail space that, is suffering because it's retail and everybody's buying everything online. You can't really buy a workout online. I mean, you can, but you can't, right? So they probably already got, modalities in place, people in place to be able to operate something like that. But where else can you just, plunk some equipment in your space, run it without any additional people? You're not managing staff. And that's just going to enhance the viability of your own plaza, right? And that's a big thing that they want, that they're saying. And it would make sense. I just think that's fewer and far between, right? You're not going to always have a developer that's got 10,000 square feet empty space say, I think I'll just stick a gym in there and I'll collect the rent myself, and the profitability on top of it. So, there's just so many different options. There's no set footprint. There are some requirements as far as, lighting and safety and accessibility, but freestanding buildings, plazas, whatever. Just a lot of options. And I think if you make the phone call, or if they come out and want to visit us and we'll show them around, then they'll really get an eye-opening experience.
All right. I rarely put up questions from people that are watching live, but I'm going to put this up here just so that you can answer it. Very interesting model. Love the low labor overhead piece. So I'm assuming an outside cleanup crew comes in a few times a week. Also, what happens if there's an incident, someone needs help in the movement?
Perfect. Great question. Very common question. Yes, everybody that we use on the outside are going to be contractors. Now that we have 6 facilities, I have my own contractor that does just our facilities. He's a facilities maintenance guy. Somebody picks up the phone, they call and say, hey, this treadmill, whatever. We got an email today saying 2 or 3 treadmills at one location aren't even turning on. Could be just a breaker thing. I send that guy out first, right? Because he's doing his rounds anyways. He does the patching and the repairs and the paints and the painting, that kind of stuff. Fitness equipment repair is a contractor. Cleaning company is a contractor. They all have their own key tags. They answer to the facilities manager, who then answers to our operations manager, who's my daughter. But they're all subs except for Dalen, who's the operations manager. She's the only salaried employee. As far as emergencies, so keep in mind, we're fully surveilled, full 24-hour, everywhere except the locker rooms. There is a courtesy phone at every location, which people rarely use because everybody has their own cell phones and so forth. But they can pick it up. They can call us. Everybody has our email address, and they've got the operations manager's cell phone number. So if they have a question, they can pick it up and give a call. We have had a couple of emergencies that have happened over the years. Not many. I'm knocking on wood. And what we found is that members are great about handling members. If somebody's exercising in a city park and somebody trips and falls or whatever, somebody will come along, they scrape them up off the floor, pick them up. And if they have to, they call 911 on their cell phone. That's happened. And that's what we found about our members is that, remember, keep in mind, liability often lies with your employees. Mm-hmm. If there's a finger to point at someone and say that person should have been there to do this because they're working here, then you're kind of exposing yourself to a little bit of liability. When the sign on the front door says basically, and I paraphrase, no lifeguard on duty, if somebody goes to a state beach and they drown, are you suing the state? Because you've advised them there is a no lifeguard. Now, if the lifeguard is there and they're sitting on their log and they're watching a person drown, now you're opening yourself up to something, right?
Well, it's also community because people have each other's backs, and if in case of an emergency, the innocent bystanders step in and take over too.
So. I'll tell you one quick story because I know you got to go. In our Northampton, New Hampshire location, there's a gentleman who's got I don't know if it's cerebral palsy or something, but he rides a little trike, and he has canes, and that's an interesting group of people because they got together as members, just at the 10 a.m. crew, 9 10 a.m. and they bought him a new powered trike. And I just heard that story the other day. And they all pitched in. Well, one guy bought it, and then a bunch of other members said, "Hey, we want to pitch in," and they all pitched in, and they raised even more money. And then another member is the guy that services it, right? And that's the kind of community and in one facility, you can have multiple communities. Your 10 o'clock crew is different than your noon lunchtime crew, which is different than your 5 o'clock crew. But they're all hanging out and they're talking with each other, and they're crossing. They're sharing their PRs and all their Instagram stuff and social media, and then they post us. We had to put mirrors up in the locker rooms, selfie mirrors. That was my daughter's idea, because we didn't want people taking their shirts off and posing in the gym anymore. So we just and if you go to the Instagram, you'll see the people in the locker rooms with their pictures. Now what she's going to do is she's going to put watermarks, logos on the mirrors. So now you can't get away from having the branding, so you know where you are, you're going to post it. So
I love it.
But that's kind of how that happens. It is the community that kind of helps each other because it's just a different type of people than I think the big box, because they're paying a little bit more and it becomes theirs, even though it is reciprocal. And then you get people that'll go from one gym to another and they kind of meet each other at central locations and lift together, even though one maybe live 30 miles from the other guy. So
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but go watch this back and go watch the website and change it. Because ready to own your own gym franchise, you are selling so much more than that. But to someone that is on the outside, whether it's walking an expo or it's accidentally landing onto your website, simplify this message. Because if you simplify life balance, you talk about how we are the anti-big box gym. Like you have all the tools here.
If anybody has suggestions on how to put that in picture form, how to demonstrate what work-life balance looks like in a photograph, then, maybe it's just, this is me working. This is me working. This is me working, and in different environments or something. This is, looks like it just looks like life. So
this will help because the dog coming up in the middle of you talking about your business is exactly what you're selling. I'm serious. If it
was a 3-year-old, that probably would have happened too, and I'm okay with that.
I love it.
Those days are over. Those days are long over. So. Yeah.
Well, Craig, this is great. I do wish you the best of luck, and I'm looking forward to seeing where the story goes. But I know that you have some magic pieces here. Unwind it a little bit and see what happens. So
we're working on it.
Thanks for doing this.
Appreciate the time.
Yeah, of course. For Craig, I'm Nick. This is another episode of Meet the Zor.